Yeah, so the main objective for today is to create this flow. So last time when we met, we looked at sort of things on a mapping on a per region. So you could just use the state ID within the data set itself. But what we can do is actually start using latitude and longitude data. And when you have that level of granularity, there's a lot more power in terms of what you're able to plot and what you can actually show. So just to briefly outline what we're looking at, this is the US electoral map, but it's on a per county basis. So instead of looking at every state, we're looking at every county where this data exists. And then in the Northeast, you'll see that there's these are more on the township level as opposed to the county, which is why they're a lot more and much smaller. And then I'll also go through where we found this data set, and it's a repository that could be leveraged by you guys moving forward. And so we'll go through the different views here and basically work to build these different views. And by doing that together, I think it's going to, one, help enable you to understand how to use coordinates, the latitude, longitude, to be able to place these dots, moving between perspectives again, which is something we're just continuing to hammer on over and over, using color to represent different attributes, and then how to add labels as well to the flow itself. So that's the idea here with these different views. I think it'll be good practice, and we're moving beyond flat maps and into globes. So hopefully that's relevance for the current current events, but will be interesting to everybody, given sort of we're coming from different backgrounds. So that's the overall goal here. What I've done is in the chat window, I've placed a link to the actual raw data set. And if you can pull that up and download that as a CSV onto your computer, we're going to go from there. And what I'm going to do is basically we're going to have people share their screen as we go through this. And so we can help each other out as we start to build this flow together. Any questions or comments or thoughts so far?
So one question I had really quick was the data source. One of the biggest issues I had in the beginning was, was there a limit to the amount of data? Because we do know the elections were massive. Did you have to summarize, or was there 30,000 data points? What was the limit?
Sure. So we can handle. I think it's up. We set the limit at 60,000. Is that right, Jason? I think you're muted.
So 60,000. If we're going to do any visualization, just make sure we summarize to 60. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I believe so. And I believe for this one, since it's on a county level, we get close. So we're at 50,000. Or sorry, no, that's 5,000. So we have lots of room there. Still to go. But the actual way I got this data is using. There's a platform called Kaggle. Has anyone from here heard of or used Kaggle before?
Yes.
So Kaggle is a pretty good source for just finding lots of data sets. And it was this one that's related to the 2020 election that I use as sort of the source of truth. And so that was beneficial to have on the county level, but there are a few other activities. So from this initial download, I'm not going to get too much into this level of detail on the call, but essentially going from this data, so this is the actual raw data, which shows the state, the county, the candidate, which party they're a part of, and the number of votes they received, to be able to tally that up. One, to identify who won, so which county actually won or is leading at that time, as well as the total number of votes. So there's a lot of aggregation that I'm doing sort of in this Google Sheets that we can go through at another point, but I want to focus this conversation a little bit more on just the end visualization portion of it. But if you guys have other questions on how I pulled in the latitude, longitude, how I did some of the other activities here to actually get the data set into that final version that you're seeing here, we can go through that. So yeah, with that, let's go ahead and get started then. So if you can download that Excel file, and then maybe we'll just start with Gary, and then we're just going to go around in terms of who shares their screen, and we can sort of start that way in terms of actually building this out. Before I get going, any issues with logging in or any of that for people?
I think I'm still waiting on my email to get approval from you, Michael.
Okay, let me check. I believe I went in and validated everyone. Are you able to log in currently, Nikhil? If not,
I'm trying right now on just a.flow.gl, and then I'm using that email and password, and then it's saying something about email activation, but I don't see anything in my email. So I'm assuming that's on your end, though I'm not too sure.
No, you need to activate, you need to validate your email, which would be in your spam folder. And maybe the registration email went to your spam folder. If not, I can do it in the back end here.
Yeah, I checked my spam and it's also not there. It might just be taking a little time because I registered only like 45 minutes ago.
No, it should go out right away. So paste your email address or username into the chat so I can hunt on it.
Thanks.
And I'm in the same boat, so I'll put my email as well.
okay, great. So while they're getting access here, so I see Gary, you're starting to build a flow already, which is great. So it's so yeah, when you're on a.flow.gl, it's clicking that create flow button, and then yeah, you can start to title it, or it's
Sorry,
a title
yeah.
you can change.
Let me know. I drink a lot of coffee, so I might go too fast. So just tell me to slow it down.
You're good. You're good. Well,
So question is, do I allow to remix?
yeah, so you can change that later as well. It
Okay.
doesn't really impact things. It actually had more of an impact earlier on in the platform when
Okay.
everyone could see everything anyone published. And the idea there being that you can sort of browse and then remix other people's flows together. But since then we've you don't just automatically see everyone's published flows, and so that's changed a bit.
So the next thing I'm going to do is once I've created my flow, I've clicked on the data icon, and I'm going to do a create new, and I'm going to upload the CSV file for the 2020 election stuff that I've already downloaded. Correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. It's saved. I accidentally saved my data set as an Excel spreadsheet, so I might have to re-download. So give me 1 second. Should be pretty quick, and it
Okay.
is. And then I can just go in and do an upload view, choose file, and choose to download. And there we go, presidential results.
Great.
And then it loads in, and it says the flow has been updated. Everything seems to be in. Is there anything I need to verify while I'm in, once I've uploaded it?
Nope, there shouldn't be anything to verify here. So I've done a lot of the cleaning already, so we should be good to go there.
So I just close.
I'll go ahead and jump in and just
Sure.
let people know that the CSV file, the first row must be headers. They can't be blank. They can't be duplicative. Every header must be unique. And if it doesn't conform to that, then it will pop up a message and say, hey, this doesn't work, try again. And I'll also let you know that you can upload the same file over and over again. So very often in Google Sheets, you go back to Google Sheets, you make some changes in the data, and you upload it again. Well, that file name will now have like a parenthesis 1 next to it. Next time you download it, it's the way browsers add something onto the file name. And you can just use that new file name. The system will all be fine. So you can just keep uploading into the same data object, we call it, over and over again.
So basically it doesn't cache, it will be rewritten over and over?
Correct. As long as it's in this data object, right? You can create another data object which has a different file, right? So you create new there would create another set of data which might be applied to a different swarm or whatever, but that's correct. You can just keep writing over it as you alter your data.
And one more question. A lot of our data is put on S3 or something like that. Right now, it's still upload to be able to store. There's no linkage to a cloud link. Is that correct?
That's correct. And what we basically do is for an enterprise customer, they tell us, hey, here's where our data is going to be, and here's how often it needs to be updated, and we can build an integration to it.
Cool.
Awesome. Good questions.
So I guess the next thing I do is swarm, and this is where I am.
Yep.
I
And so
I am
before
led
we
by the master.
yeah, and so before we get to that, I just want to check that everyone's been able to upload that data set
Right.
and was able to download from the link.
I'm not sure if it's related to my access, but I don't see the upload view. I just see the from library option.
Not it's
Okay, that's again me. I'm going to give you a trial subscription, of course. Paid, looks like.
And while you're doing that, you know what I think is really cool? I didn't notice this. If you hit Control S after you've done the upload, the flow gets updated. So that's the shortcut.
oh yeah,
did
to
not
save,
know
yeah.
about. Nice.
Yep. And then, while you're doing that, this is sort of an optional thing, but something I like to do, which is to change the environment. Because I'm not a fan of blue, but that's my opinion. And so to do that, if you scroll down on the left-hand bar, you can go to
Okay.
environments and change that.
Left-hand bar. I'm sorry, where is it? I'm sorry. On
It should be underneath line.
Is it console?
It might be that yeah, so it's there. It looks like your screen resolution is
Okay, sure. I
perhaps
can make it a little bit
too
bigger.
Do Control minus as well. We'll
Okay.
open it up for you.
Control minus. Don't see it.
And I think you're on a Mac, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
It
yeah.
might just
I'm on
work
a
just
Mac
making it
and-
a full screen. Might give you a little more.
Yeah, let me do that. Give me a second. Let me go full screen. Full screen. Where am I going? There we go.
Cool.
Uh-huh.
So there's
Okay.
environments.
And you were
So-
saying just change the background to whatever I want, or
Uh-huh.
is there a preferred template?
You can change it. I think let's put it to one of the new ones.
Okay.
That Jason just added. So Corona by Ulakai, I think is pretty
Okay.
sweet. So
And the show floor and the stabilizing grid, do I need to use any of those?
no, those are really more for virtual reality.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to use those for now.
Okay,
Cool.
cool. And I'll go back up to the swarm.
Yep. And so checking back in for Yep.
Yeah, so both guys look like they have paid subscription. They're marked as a paid subscription. Do you add that, Michael?
yeah, I added it before the meeting.
Okay. So what you may need to do is log out and log back in again, guys, you two,
Okay.
and that'll probably pick up your new subscription status.
And actually on that point, why don't we have we'll just switch gears and have you, Nikhil, maybe present your screen, and that way we can
Yeah, I'll
follow
stop.
along with
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Cool.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so I just logged out and logged back in.
It's- Perfect. Awesome. So yeah, go to the data tab, create new, and then
have it.
still missing. Okay. All right. So apologies for that. This is something we'll have to work through. So Jason, I might have you to sort of talk with them sort of in a smaller group, maybe start another Zoom call and try to diagnose there.
Yeah, just one other thing, just do a full refresh on your browser and then log in. It definitely looks like you're set to be active here. So I'm confused.
Is the issue not being able to like upload the data set?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's been working fine. Like I already have it up and everything.
Oh, okay, then how about you screen share and I'll
Okay.
try to mess with it. Do you do anything specific to be able to access it? Or are you just
No, I just logged in, logged off, logged back in, everything worked.
Cool. Let me try again.
Okay.
This is
Cool.
what I
So
got.
while that's going on, if we can, yeah. So you're presenting here. Okay, cool. So let's keep everyone moving here. So let's first thing we'll do is actually create a map. So before we create the swarm, let's actually start with this picture of the globe. And so on map, just click on create new. Yep, so we see the sphere of the world. And so we can actually up that radius as well. So the radius is in meters. So this is a quarter of a meter, which means the overall diameter is going to be half a meter, which is a good size for augmented reality when you have it in your room itself. I do think that is valuable to see. But I like to increase it a little bit. So let's go ahead and set the radius maybe to 0.5. So it'll be just a hair tall bigger for everybody. Great. And so what you should see is if you can actually hit the reset button on the very top. Okay. So the reason you couldn't see the globe at first was just the camera was in a different position. And that's why we just couldn't see where the globe was. And if you scroll down on that map, on the right-hand side, you'll see some other options there as we go through it. But the one I want to pay particular attention to is the one that's for positioning. And so if you scroll down a little further, great. So one thing to note is for every object we add, the positioning is fixed and we're setting the coordinates of it. We try to keep everything at 0, 0, 0. And the reason being is that that's going to be the center of rotation for all of your AR scene. And so that's what we're going to work on. But because what we're looking at is just the US, and we don't really care about the rest of the world, in this instance at least, it's going to be just a little different. And so the trick here is if you open up rotation, and then start to play around with the vertical and horizontal rotation by increasing and decreasing those until we see the US sort of as the main centerpiece of what we want to focus on. And then in addition, I had the US. Yeah, so actually keeping it sort of like that is good. So if you go back to where it was, and then instead what we're going to want to do is actually move the globe down just a bit. And this will make sense in a moment, because right now when you rotate, it's going to be rotating around the whole globe. But what we really want is it to start to rotate, or what seems like rotating around the US. And so for that, what you're going to do is that green arrow that's showing, if you click and drag that green arrow up and down, let's go ahead and move it down just a little, like a quarter of a meter. So go the other direction, actually. Okay, so that's good for now. Let's try that, and we'll adjust this as we keep moving forward here. But this would be a good start. So let's go ahead and click on Swarm next. And while I'm doing that, just want to check in with everyone. Was everyone able to create a globe, or is there anyone that needs would like to share their screen if they're having an issue creating the globe? Okay. That is it. Okay, so on this swarm, let's go ahead and create a new swarm. Perfect. And on this, let's go ahead and select the data source. So underneath source, it starts out as none, and let's go ahead and select the data that we uploaded just a moment ago. So now it knows what data to look at, and so right away, you're seeing all these dots come into place, and that's every row of that data set. And so this is where we're going to start to order the information. And just for fun, let's just leave this view, and let's go ahead and add a step. So let's click Add Step in the top left-hand corner.
Got it.
Great. And so when we add a step, that's going to create a new, there's a little train track at the very bottom of the screen. And so you'll see what step you're on. And so on this next step, let's go ahead and click New Perspective. And let's just name this, I usually just put numbers. You can name it anything you want, but let's just put a number 2 maybe. Yep. And one thing to note is that on that little train track, it looks like you're actually on step 1 right now. And so let's go ahead and move that to the second step. There you go. And you can click and drag like you just did, or just click directly on that step 2.
Gotcha.
Perfect. Cool. So now let's, underneath perspectives, actually, can you go back to step 1 real quick? I just want to see something real quick. Okay, cool. So what you'll notice here is that on step 1, because you defined a new perspective while step 1 was showing, it automatically assumed that your perspective wants to stay with perspective 2, which is fine. Let's leave that for now. And so we'll go back to step 2, and then we're going to adjust the perspective underneath the default perspective, which is the name of this perspective. So we can leave default selected, and let's change the chart type from random to, this is going to be map from coordinates. So from the last time we went through this, we did map from region, which you could just use the state name or the country name. And in this case, we're actually going to use the latitude, longitude. So we're going to use the map 1. So click on using map and map 1. It looks like we might have a second map to deal with. But anyways, then we'll add, or underneath latitude column, we'll select latitude, or lat rather. In the longitude column, we'll select long. Great. And seeing everything map. And so you'll notice that it maps to a different spot. And the reason being is that it looks like we have 2 maps. So let's go ahead and just change it here from using map 1 to say using map 2. There we go. And then we can go in after and actually delete that other map. The other thing you'll notice is that by default, it starts out with the dots a certain distance off of the map itself. So those dots are not resting on the map, but are instead sort of floating above it. The way you change that is that first attribute, which says with a distance from the map. I personally like setting that more to 0 for things like this, where we want it sort of touching the map itself. Great. And so right now, what you're seeing is sort of, not very interesting, because we're just seeing, every county. So every data point on that, on the map itself. So what we want to do is start to actually add some, change the colors of the dots, change the size of the dots, change the height of the dots. And so to do that, let's go ahead and I'm going to switch gears and have someone else start presenting. And we can pick it up with them for some of these new views. So, any volunteers for presenting? Otherwise, I will just call on someone.
I wouldn't mind doing it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, no worries. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Too many tabs.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we should be good.
All right, cool. Look at that. Same exact look. That's great. Cool. So let's create this first view. So if you just look back at my video, the first view I want to make, or let's set is this view, which is basically just coloring those dots based upon it's actually a value in the spreadsheet itself. But we could do it a different way, and I can show you that as well. But let's just color the dots based on who won that county. So if we look back at what we have here, underneath color, let's go ahead and change that from single value to column in data. And then the column is called color. So you'll notice that essentially I assigned red and blue as options. But let me just show you a different way to do this if you don't actually have that in the data set. And so for that, underneath using, instead of saying column in data, go ahead and select color scheme. And then from the color scheme, go ahead and select the drop down of, instead of color, if you can select winner. Okay, never mind, it wasn't winner. Actually, if you can keep it on color, essentially it's going to be an attribute that is a categorical variable. It's basically saying like if you won or not. And I think I just used that to define the color in the Excel sheet itself, but you can pick some other attribute. But underneath scheme, if you can select scheme, and then you can start to play around with the different color schemes that are built in. This is something we're continuing to update, and we're going to add the ability for you to define your own colors so that you don't have to put that in the Excel sheet itself. But just so you can see how you can start to change these colors around just within the editor without having to add it into the Excel sheet itself or the CSV. So it's actually pretty cool, and it's actually kind of fun to do it that way. So let's go ahead and change it back to the column in data just to keep it standard, but just wanted to show you guys that. Great, cool. So so from here, let's go ahead and add another step. And on this next step, let's also create a new perspective so that we're changing this map and looking at this data in a different way. And so in this next view, what we're going to do is actually add some height. And so if you look at my screen again, on the height idea, what we want to do is be able to show how many people voted, which was in that data set, as the height, so that we're extrapolating those dots out a little bit further. And so to do that, let's go ahead and on this new perspective, let's click on where it says offset column none. Let's go ahead and change none to, I think it's number of votes, something like that.
I'm sorry, so after the perspective, is it the chart type? Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're good. So it's still the same chart type. There's a thing that says offset column, right where it's selecting, and change that to votes, which in the data set is just the number of votes. And you'll notice that it didn't change anything. And that's because we need to set the max offset, which is by default blank there. And this is going to be the distance from the edge of the map out that you want the bars to go. And so if this map that we made, I think was 0.5 meter in radius, we probably want to set this to like 0.2 maybe, so 0.2 of a meter. You can change this around and sort of play around with what works for you. And is that working? Maybe try to increase it a little bit more. Maybe
I think it might be percent of votes instead of.
Oh, there it went. Okay. I don't know why it didn't update right away for the first time you hit it, but that looks right. So part of why this might look a little more, chaotic is that there's a lot of overlapping dots. And so one thing we can do is, there's two ways to do this. One, we could make the map bigger, which I think I'd recommend, because the value of 0.005 is actually already pretty small in augmented reality and to be able to see those dots. So let's go ahead and go to map, and we're going to up the size of this map a little further. So let's make the radius, let's actually make it like 1 meter. Since we're just focused on the US, that's going to be a little easier to see.
So you're changing the radius, correct?
Yes. Yep. And so you'll notice that the map updated, but the underlying swarm hasn't updated its position. So this is just just a bug in terms of the preview of this window. So we'll adjust that in just a moment. But let's go ahead and move that new globe down just a bit. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Perfect. Cool. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is hit save and then refresh the page. And by refreshing, it's essentially going to update the preview so that the swarm is attached to the updated map. So there's just certain instances that we're still working through like that where it doesn't quite show up. Okay, so what happens? Okay, there we go. So the reason when you clicked in, and it looks like you figured that out pretty quickly, is that it goes to that default camera position, and you had to zoom out to be able to see the map. So what I'd recommend is that on this new position you just set, click on Set Camera, and that way when you go to that step in the future, it will just be in the right spot. Cool. So I know I went through a little fast there in terms of updating the map. Any questions or issues with updating the map from people?
So I just want to confirm, so each step, we're actually configuring the map. I'm sorry, we're configuring the swarm again from perspective.
Yep.
So I have 3 perspectives, default 2 and 3. And on each perspective, there is no carryover from the last perspective. You have to reassign the map, the longitude, the latitude, and the color. Is that correct?
So it's when you create a new perspective, it just copies the perspective you have already. So you don't have to necessarily update the attributes, but it's you're sort of changing 2 things at the same time. Steps, you can have as many steps as you want, and you can also have as many perspectives as you want. You can only assign 1 perspective per step, if that makes sense, but you can have lots of different perspectives you're switching between for a swarm. I think I might have made that more confusing.
So the
actually.
relationship is a step is a perspective, or a perspective is a step?
They're 2 independent things. A perspective is just the state of a swarm. The step is the state of the swarm, the map, the text, everything else in the scene.
Okay, so when I was just creating multiple steps, all I had to do is actually create multiple perspectives. I didn't have to. I could only have 1 step.
Let me jump in and describe this a slightly different way. I mean,
Sure.
Everything Mike said is absolutely accurate, but think about steps, swarms, and perspectives as 3 things that can overlap each other in very many ways. So let me describe that. So you can have 1 swarm that you create a single perspective of, but then you walk through 3 steps, and each step, the only thing that changes is you move the camera, or maybe you change.
So it's like
text or something.
film. I get it. So it's basically left angle, right angle, full medium shot, that type of thing.
Yes, yes, that's exactly the first example. The second example is you can have a swarm with through a series of perspectives. And so each step you would say, hey, swarm, step 1 is swarm perspective 1, step 2 is swarm perspective 2, etc. So you're thinking about on a swarm, which is a single data set, you're rearranging, giving yourself a totally different perspective on that data. And you have actually almost total control over it. You can change that view of the data each step completely by the perspective, the colors, almost everything, not 100% everything, but almost everything.
So in this case, what we're doing is we're mapping, our first swarm and perspective in step is basically mapping the data to the map that's on the world. The second one is showing the size of the data by its distance from the ground on the map, which is just showing a different type of swarm and a different perspective.
It's a different perspective on the same swarm. And you're totally getting this. This is one of the hardest things to kind of relate to or understand about the Flow editor right now. I'm hoping to figure out ways to make it easier, but when you actually think it through, when you get it, it's the appropriate level of power you want, because we don't think of steps the same way that you think of slides exactly, right? A slide in PowerPoint is a single idea. It does what it does, and then it disappears and you go to the next slide.
Right.
For us, we actually never want stuff to disappear, because we think that's a cognitive brain problem. You don't know what happened and why am I in this new place, and you don't have a sense of cohesive cognitive cohesion across those different slides.
Right.
Sometimes you do want to change it anyway, and that's fine. But what we try to do is say, hey, take this same set of data, watch it animate from this space to that space to that space. And therefore your brain says, oh, I get it. It's the same thing. It's just now I'm looking at a different view. And it's much easier to build a cohesive mental model.
So basically, it's storytelling through animation, really from swarm perspective, step swarm perspective, but it can be interchanged.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess the only thing I'm losing a little bit is, which is really the pop of this visualization. I'm showing the distance, but I think I missed the step where basically Michael was going through how do you show that length or that spike?
Yeah, I was going to show that next, actually. So we'll
okay, good. I thought I'd gotten ahead.
No,
I
you're good. So on this front, so actually, if we could, if you could click back on step 2, I just want to check one thing. Okay. Okay, cool. Cool. And then click back on step 3 for me. Okay, great. So on this next step, so let's go ahead and add a connection. And so connections is the way you attach dots to one another or to a map. And on this, what we're going to do is create a new connection. Perfect. And then click underneath swarm. We need to tell it which swarm this connection is attaching stuff to. And so for that, it's, right there. Swarm 1. And then the connection type, it's called scatter drop lines, which might be a little confusing, but it's essentially take the dot and go down to either the map or to the origin on a scatter plot is sort of what it does. Looks like it might have a little bit of a preview update issue, but I think when we refresh, we'll be good to go there. So if you can click back on step 2 and then move forward again to step 3. Great. Okay, we will figure what's going on there.
I know what
I know
you
what's
see,
going
Michael, and it will be fixed in the next release. We already have the fix in, it's just not pushed yet.
So I know what the issue is. So if you click back on map for me, and if you go all the way down to the bottom, this is actually what I was checking before. What we found is that we've added the feature where you can change the map position between steps, but what you're seeing is that it's having the connections drawn or looking back at the step 2. So what I'm going to have you do is click this button that says apply position to all steps. And what that's going to do is say that position of the map is going to now apply to every step. And so if you click back on step 2 and then click back to step 3, it should be accurate now. Nope. Okay.
So, Michael, trust me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I had that one. Okay. Cool. So let's just keep going from here. So let's go ahead and add another step. Great. So now what we're going to do on this next step is so there's another step here where I change the colors again. This is just I guess I should show this. This would be valuable. Okay. So on this step, let's click on swarm again. And let's create a new perspective. Yep. Great. And so on this perspective, let's go ahead and we're going to change this, what should I call it? The colors. So instead of doing a color from a column in the data set, let's go ahead and click on color using scale values. And on scale values, there's another column that we call, I think it's called percent Democrat. And essentially what I'm looking at here is that this is the percentage difference between, it's basically blue to red of how Democrat did they vote. And so this is the way we can show the ratio between Democrat to Republican votes. It's a little tricky because it doesn't really take into account independent votes, but we can talk through that at a different point. So to change this, let's go ahead and change the scale so that the green is a different value. And let's set that to red. Yep. And so you can do that by either selecting on that color spectrum bar or typing something in.
Whoop.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Okay. I've never seen that, but it's oddly kind of cool. But and then let's click on the purple. Yep. And then change that to blue. Yeah, that works. Cool.
A
And-
browser refresh will clean it up if you want it to actually look right.
So just make sure to hit save and then refresh. Yep.
Random data art. Don't you guys want to make random data art at any time?
Happy clouds, happy trees.
I like it. Cool. Okay. So looks like we still got a few issues with the connection. That's fine. Cool. So one other thing to note there is if you click on Swarm again, and this is one thing related to the colors that I think is important to know, is that it sets the scale from the minimum to the maximum values in your data set. And that might not always be what you want to use for the color range. And so if you click on the 3 dots in the very top right-hand corner and then click on Advanced.
Sorry, one more time for that.
Sure. The 3 dots in the very top right-hand corner of your screen and then click on Advanced. That's going to add some additional values here. And so what you'll notice is that underneath color, where it says color using scale values, you can see now what the range is. And so in this case, it's pretty close to 0, which is good, but you might want to set that actually to 0. So it's full red for full Republican, full blue for full Democrat, and that way it's an even representation. But we should be somewhat good to go with what we got. So I just wanted to call that out, but didn't want to draw too much attention. So Brad, if you can click on the 3 dots again, and we're just going to hide that advanced tab by clicking it again. There we go. Cool. All right, so let me switch gears here and have someone else present, and we'll do another perspective here where we change the size of these dots.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to end my screen share.
You're good.
Can't figure it out.
Bottom of the screen, move your mouse to the bottom of the screen and pop
It's okay.
up. There you go.
I gotcha. Cool. All right. Josh or Adnan, either of you guys want to present your screen?
I'll go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Who? Yeah, either one. Either. Perfect. Thanks, Adnan. All right. Cool. So yeah, we'll go to that last step that we're all on. Excellent. And so on this step, let's go ahead and click Add Step. And on this last step, and it looks like when you added this step, it was added, but the little train track on the lower bottom, yeah, there we go. So it looks like there was a difference between, yeah. So anyways, just want to make sure we're on the right step. So it looks like we're on the right step now. And then let's click on Swarm. And on this swarm, one other thing we can do, so we've indicated now using the color, sort of how Democrat or how Republican that vote was. That's something we can keep playing around with a little bit, but the other thing to do is the actual size of those dots. We can have that also be set to the number of votes. And so if we click Scale Values there, underneath Sizes, and sorry, did we add a new perspective already? I apologize if you did that already or did not.
In this new step, we did not.
Did not? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we're going to want to click New Perspective. So I make this mistake too, where we add a new step and I update the perspective, but I forgot to create a new perspective, and so it's just something to get in the habit of doing. So great. So we've added this new perspective, and now we're going to change this perspective. So under these sizes using, so sizes using and then scale value. Perfect. And so then we're going to scale using, and then we're going to use votes, so the total number of votes. And so what that's going to do is it's going to update the size of those end dots. And so yeah, as you start to move around, you'll see the size of those dots change, and that's another attribute that we can start to play around with. But what you're doing with a view sort of like this is that you're adding some additional an additional dimension that's actually already represented on the page. So we already represented it using the height of the bar, but by using the size of the dot as well, it sort of adds some additional emphasis and it adds the ability to read and understand. So, with all these perspectives, to me, what you're doing is that you're able to focus the story on a more specific subject. If that makes sense. So it's like each perspective can actually reveal a sort of different insights, even though it's the exact same data. You're just showing it in a different way, whether it be through heights or color, etc. So hopefully that helps resonate in terms of the practice there. Cool. So one last thing I want to do here is on this map, let's go ahead and add an on rollover. So underneath there, you'll see on select and on rollover. And this is the way that you actually add sort of some interaction or some labels into this. And so from there, let's go ahead and just click on county. I believe is yeah. And so what's going to happen is if you click on run in the top of the bar, and now you scroll your mouse over, you'll actually be highlighting that cell or that dot and be able to say what county is actually being represented. So there's other attributes we could add in there, but I think on a very basic level, that's something that adds a certain level of interaction. There is a section that's named labels, but that labels is not quite the same, and it's something we're still working through a little bit to be able to label specific attributes here. Right now that has to be defined in the spreadsheet itself. So hopefully that's helpful there. Great. So yeah, anyways, we've created now multiple perspectives. The one thing to note though is that when you added this additional on rollover label, that's only going to apply to the perspective that you're in. So if you click back on this previous step, so step 4, we don't have that assigned. And so when you roll over, nothing's going to show up. And so in order to do this, if you want to apply this to all of them, you basically need to click on swarm and then click through the steps and basically scroll down and enable that on rollover for each of those steps or for each of those perspectives. Same sort of thing. So what you're doing is that when you move steps, it automatically says what perspective should be showing. And that's why you're able to update it there. Yeah, so you can do it that way too. You're just going to want to make sure to set it to the right perspective on that step. Perfect. Nice. Got some advanced user here.
Just
Cool. I like it. Awesome. Okay. Cool. So let me so yeah, anyways, let's check in with everybody. So we've gone through it, and I think for the most part, if you look back on my screen, we've essentially recreated a lot of this. I want to point out a few details, and you'll notice that the difference between sort of what I'm showing here and what we've built together is really just some minor design things. And so one of those being that as I'm rotating here, you'll notice that it's rotating pretty well around the center of the US, even though that this is actually a globe, right? So it's not moving around the center of the globe. And the way to do that is to basically move the position of the globe so that 0, 0, 0 is essentially right there, if that makes sense. And that's sort of the trick to getting it to rotate where you really want it to rotate around.
So where do you go? Do you go to map?
Yeah, and so to do that, if you go to map, yep, and then so it's actually gonna be a little tricky to define exactly from this. So what I would recommend is actually if you click on text for me, and then create new text. And you can just leave it like that. And if you go down to position, set the position to 0, 0, 0. So you can manually update it like that or just hit the minus signs. Great. So now we know where the origin is. So if you click back on map, and then you can use the that green, red, and blue arrow to basically move this so that the text is essentially like right in the center of the country, more or less. And actually go ahead and just use that green arrow and push it down quite a bit. There you go. Other way. There you go. Yeah, so let's try to go the other way. I think it's still being obfuscated. And then additionally move it back. So click on that blue bar and then push it back quite a bit. Maybe move it down a little bit. So you can tell there's a little bit of yeah, sort of playing around with this to get into the right spot. But I believe the map might need to go down and back a little bit more. Yeah.
Just save it.
Yeah, that should work. So anyways, that's one detail I just wanted to quickly highlight. So we're not getting it exactly right here, but it's something we'll figure out how to represent it a little easier, so you can see exactly where that point of rotation will be for orbit controls, to specify it right. But that's just one detail that might not be obvious. The other thing, if you look, well, yeah, that's the main thing back on my screen. The only other thing I wanted to highlight, and this is actually something Josh has started to use as well, is if you click on the three dots and click on settings, we added a new setting called Purpose is AR Video. It's down there in the bottom. And what that does is it actually turns the background black. It makes all of the navigation buttons quite small. And the reason we do that is that that's actually how I'm able to present my screen and my image at the same time, by using OBS and taking out that black. So there's more details I can go into there, but I just wanted to call that out for if you were trying to create a video using just your camera. I can help you get through there, but that's something we added specifically for that purpose.
All right, where's that? How do you get into that menu?
Yeah, so to get to that menu, you click on the three dots and then click on settings. And you'll see a slew of other options there too, including this one that's show meeting invite button, which allows you to within the flow itself have this invite button so other people can join you in a live meeting. Cool. So I think we're at time here. And yeah, so here in the hour, we basically recreated this flow from this data set. There's a lot of things we could adjust and tune and design sort of more to fit the need. But hopefully that was illustrative of one, how you use coordinates, how you're able to use a globe instead of just a flat map, as well as a little bit more advanced things in terms of using different colors, scaling the colors, using a distance off of the map, and actually connecting the map to that dot using a line. So yeah, that's sort of the lesson here for today. Any comments, questions, thoughts on today?
And you can share the recorded video so we can kind of go through, because I'd love to be able to review it one more time if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to upload it into our YouTube here and right after this. I'll send out the link to everybody. Very cool.
So we can show the world our mistakes as we were asking you questions.
Exactly. Yeah, this is great.
Vulnerability is the new gold, isn't it?
Yes, it is the new gold. Yes, very rare.
Yeah, and if you guys have other ideas, on how we can make this training more helpful to people, we're open ears. We're learning along the way here as well with you all, and so hopefully this is helpful, and we can go into any specific areas that are of specific interest to you guys as well. So yeah, thanks so much for joining, everybody. I know some people had to jump off right at the top of the hour, but yeah, thanks again for joining.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Pleasure to meet you, Gary.